Hello everybody and welcome to Dungeons & Drams. You've all asked me to help you design a cult, which says a lot about you all, but also totally makes me want to do it. So let's go ahead and go over to the prompt that I've created, but this one's going to be a little bit different than normal. Usually I have, here's a prompt, you're just going to get your answers. We have to develop this one because a cult is fairly nuanced and there's a lot of different little facets that we got to consider. So we're going to do them all and it'll be great, but this might be a little bit of a longer video, but stick with it. It'll be good. Let's check it out. So the first thing that we're going to do is the same thing we always do. We're going to tell it that we are a dungeon master playing 5th edition, and we're going to ask a question. In this case, I'm going to say, I am a dungeon master running Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I want to create a cult that will be a compelling part of my campaign and interact with my players. I want to figure out the following. And now this is just the initial set of questions. We're going to build upon these after we get our answers. And, you know, depending on what this gives out, maybe I'll do it again, maybe we won't, maybe we'll just go with it. What is the cult's name? Always important. What is the cult's long-term goal? This is important to know because it will help you as the DM to find out when they should show up or what they're doing in the background while your players are off harassing some magic store worker. So what are some short-term goals that the cult would take to achieve their long-term goal? These are potentials for interactions. These are different encounters of sorts. All right. What does the cult believe in? Obviously important. Why do they exist, right? If the cult meets, where do they meet? Describe their meetings. Who opposes the cult? Is the cult hidden or public? Those two questions kind of have to do with each other. If the cult's like, you know, just out in public sacrificing people and whatever else, like maybe the guards are in on it, maybe they're not, maybe they hide in a basement and they talk about what they're going to do to a noble or something like that. Why does the cult exist? Now this is a little bit more nuanced because obviously they exist for a reason, and this might end up being a bit of a duplicate answer, but sometimes they exist because they originally tried to convince the the clergy or the religious types that something was going to happen, but they disagreed with them. So now they exist because they were shunned. How do you suggest the party first meet or become aware of the cult? All right, so that's our initial set of questions. We're going to go into a lot more stuff, but I have to prompt it more. So let's go ahead and see what this puts out. So let's read through this together. So the cult's name is the Silent Dawn. Their long-term goal is to usher in a new age where silence reigns and the world is rid of noise pollution. I can appreciate that, including both literal noise and metaphorical noise, like chaos, conflicting ideas, and emotional turmoil. They believe that in this silence, true enlightenment and peace can be found. So I kind of like this as a concept because it's not just truly evil. It's people attempting to do something probably evil for a good reason, which is kind of the definition of a cult, I suppose, but I still like this. It feels a little bit more gray. Short-term goals. Infiltrate and gain influence in local governments or circles of power, pushing for stricter noise regulations. So it's a bunch of Karens. Sabotage or shut down major sources of noise like blacksmiths, marketplaces, and theaters. Recruit influential members from all societal strata to give them a broad base of power. Seek out and destroy artifacts or individuals that are considered beacons of noise, which can include bards, town criers, or magical items like the bell of echoing thunder. Establish zones of silence in various towns and cities where no noise is permitted. Okay, so I'm liking this already. I don't know what it's going to tell us as our first interaction, but I absolutely think that your players might arrive in a town, or probably more like a city, where this is already established and being pushed forward. Like maybe they've achieved 3 of the 4 goals here. All right, their beliefs are the world has been corrupted by noise, leading to miscommunication, conflict, and unrest. In silence, one can find the true nature of the universe and their place within it. Noise disruptors, whether they be loud individuals, noisy businesses, or magical artifacts, are preventing the world from reaching its silent potential. Their leader, perhaps a high-ranking cleric or mystic, speaks for the silence, and only their words should be heeded. So we're going to talk about the leader in a little bit. Now, their meeting place is a silent sanctum, a grand underground temple with walls made of a special stone that absorbs sound. The meeting chamber is vast with the ceiling painted to mimic the night sky. Here they conduct ceremonies and whispers and practice silent meditations. Their rituals might involve members taking vows of silence for extended periods or performing dances or acts that produce little to no sound. Okay, so maybe I'm going to take a quick note here. Maybe we want to find out more about that. Describe the dances. Describe the meditations. Maybe there's something neat about that. Who opposes the cult? Bards and performers. Yeah, that makes sense. Merchants and businesses, religious groups or temples that believe in the power of song, chant, and spoken prayer, any individual or group who values free expression and sees the cult's ideology as oppressive. Okay, fair. The cult status, they're semi-hidden while they operate publicly to some degree, lobbying for quiet or whatever. Their more extreme actions, sabotage and seeking artifacts, and the full extent of their beliefs remain hidden from the general populace. Reason for existence, the cult was founded when their leader claimed to have had a divine revelation during a moment of pure silence, believing that the world's chaos and strife were directly linked to this noise. Since then, the Silent Dawn has grown in influence, with members seeing a world of silence as the path to true enlightenment and peace. And here's the part that we base an adventure off of. The first encounter with the party. The party is hired to perform at a local festival. As they're preparing, they notice strange individuals dressed in muted colors. That's a good little detail. Trying to disrupt the event subtly. Later during their performance, a significant sabotage attempt occurs. Instruments go missing, sound equipment is tampered with, etc. Investigating these disruptors leads them to the Silent Dawn and their larger, more insidious goals. This initial contact can be modified to fit any party, blah, blah, blah. Interesting. It says they might be hired just to investigate it. Okay. All right. So we've got a basis here. I think this is okay. I don't think it's like my ideal cult, but I think just for the purposes of showing what the randomness of AI can do, we're going to go with this. And, you know, if you guys end up creating a really cool cult, let me know about it in the comments. So the first thing that I want to think about, I'm going to give it our NPC template here, which I've talked about a couple of times at this point. Basically, it just defines what I think is a NPC. And I'm going to tell it to stop generating because I don't want it to generate anything yet. I just want it to know what I consider an NPC. So when we think about NPC, let's tell it to give us a leader for this place. So generate me an NPC to describe the leader of the Silent Dawn. Okay, so I like the direction that this took with it. So this person is an ASMR. They're Seraphel Whisperwind. They're non-binary, asexual. They're serene, introspective, and charismatic, which that makes sense. Physical descriptor, they're pale gold and they seem to radiate a soft light. I can see why people would follow this person. Their eyes are piercing shade of silver and blah, blah, blah. Lawful neutral, so that's kind of interesting. There's a few things here that aren't super relevant to this at the moment, but so they're the high priest or priestess of the Silent Dawn and an influential orator in many cities. So we're actually going to say like, I want a new title. So I'll come up with that in a little bit. I don't want them to be a high priest or a priestess. I want it to be something more thematic. Like great quieter. I don't know. Cause for job. They believe they were touched by a deity of silence. Okay, cool. Some of their skills and abilities, we could stat them out later and maybe we will, maybe we won't, but you guys should know how to do that based off some of my other videos. All right, so their secret, the divine revelation isn't from a benevolent deity of silence, but a trapped elder entity, I kind of saw this coming, that seeks to use the silence to break free from its chains. However, Seraphel is unaware of the entity's true intentions. So that's pretty cool. Maybe towards the end of this adventure, you actually need to save Seraphel from falling victim to this elder god or something like that. And then carried items. I thought this was interesting. A staff made of an unknown translucent material that seems to absorb sound. A book of silent hymns and rites, ceremonial robes, and blah, 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 containing a shard of the elder entity's prison. And it says that you could compare him to Elrond, which is pretty cool. All right, let's find out who the other people in this group are. So here are a few questions I think are interesting. Can you describe to me the members of this cult? I think it's important to just get an idea of who these people are. Like, who cares this much about silence, I suppose? What are their day-to-day lives like? I want to know what they're doing when they're not being a cultist. What makes them unique? So that's kind of obvious. Describe their clothing, also obvious. Describe their personality. I want to know what do they why do they care, right? Why do they want to know about this or why do they want the world to be silent? How devoted to the cult is a typical member? This one's important for encounter design because you want to know, are they going to run away? Are they going to fight to the death? Are they going to be like brutal? Are they going to be kind of like hanging back and hoping that maybe something's going to come save them, or who knows? Could you include a challenge rating and stat block for each type of member? I just thought this was good to get a gauge of what it thinks that people's power should be. So let's see. So we've got a few different types of members here, and I think this is perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for. Specifically that the Acolytes of Silence, which are going to be kind of the low tier, they're only a CR 1/2, which is kind of perfect. They're going to be the ones doing things. So they're the lower ranking members who handle the daily operations of the cult. Their day consists of prayer, silent meditation, recruiting efforts, and maintaining zones of silence. Uniqueness: Acolytes possess an uncanny ability to move silently and often communicate using a special sign language developed within the cult. That makes sense, actually. You know, I hadn't considered that. They still need to communicate, and they're going to communicate using sign language. So if you tie up an acolyte and they are really devoted, they're going to have a hard time talking. And maybe you could convince them to actually talk, which then, you know, kind of works on the whole, like, well, you've already started talking, so clearly you're not that devout, etc., etc. All right. They wear muted gray robes with the emblem of a closed eye on the chest. We'll have to ask about the closed eye, because why, right? Like, silence has nothing to do with vision. Maybe we even want to tell ChatGPT to change that. So we'll ask about the symbol. Personality: reserved, obedient, and curious. They're still learning the cult's deeper secrets and are eager to climb the ranks. Okay, so I could see them slipping a little bit. If you see one of these acolytes, they would be the ones to try to kidnap. All right, devotion, you know, like heroes, kidnapped. Moderately devoted. While they believe in the cause, they're not as deeply entrenched as higher ranking members. That makes sense. So CR 1/2. Use the Acolyte stat block from the 5e monster manual, but add the ability move silently, advantage on stealth checks. Okay, that's easy enough to do. All right, so Silent Sentinels. Day-to-day lives, these are the defenders and enforcers of the cult. They ensure the security of the Silent Sanctum. Okay, so that's going to be their base. Oversee ceremonies and handle disturbances in zones of silence. Silent Sentinels are trained to disarm and subdue without making noise. That's kind of cool. Clothing: dark, almost black robes with soft-soled boots and silver masks resembling serene faces. They're stoic, dedicated, and unyielding. Their devotion is high. They would give their lives to protect the cult's interest, and they're a CR 2. All right, so this cult altogether is probably going to be for somewhat lower levels, but that makes sense. I mean, if you're a level 17, you're not going to be dealing with, oh no, it's quiet, you know, so maybe you will. I don't know, depending on the Elder God. Stat block. Eldritch God. I said Elder earlier. I meant Eldritch. Stat block. Use the Knight stat block. Okay, so it's even giving you this. Silent strike, no noises made from their attacks. So that's pretty cool. Remove the heavy crossbow. All right, so Whispered Seers. These are probably going to be casters. They're mystics and spellcasters. They guide rituals, interpret signs, and often act as advisors. Whispered Seers are able to cast spells that revolve around silencing and calming, making them essential for the cult's goals. Flowing silver robes adorned with symbols of silence, eyes, and stars. Thoughtful, enigmatic, and profound, blah, blah, blah. So they're very high. They're deeply invested in the cult's cause, having seen visions and supporting its goals. Okay, so they're actually, like, they're convinced. It's not just devoted. They have seen it themselves. And they have seen probably this eye or something like that. Use the mage stat block. Okay, cool. So what I do like about this is, although my NPC template typically creates its own homebrew creature, I did NPCs, not monster stat blocks. And my monster stat block template actually specifies that it wants you to generate a stat block with abilities. This is actually just giving you the 5e monster manual stat blocks to use, which is also super helpful. All right. So members of the Silent Dawn vary in their level of devotion. Okay, so what is a cult without some sort of, like, really bad monster or boss of some sort to fight? So let's try to make something like that. So I've told it to generate me a creature that would be a challenge rating 5 that would defend the Silent Sanctum. This should be an aberration. Now I'm thinking that if they're talking to some sort of eldritch god, that, you know, aberrations tend to have something to do with that. So that's why I went with that. So this is the Silentscreen Aberration. All right, we'll go through this very quickly and I'll skip over parts that aren't that important, but I did like this. As you approach the Silent Sanctum, a dark form arises. its presence unsettling and eerily quiet. Tendrils with haunting faces reach out, each silent scream a testament to the price of disturbing the sacred silence. That's pretty cool. So this is the Silentscreen Aberration, born from the nightmarish melding of silence's profundity and the chaotic tendencies of aberrant energies. It is tasked with guarding the silent sanctum from intruders and snaring the minds of those who dare breach the peace. So it's a sleek black entity with a form that constantly shivers and wavers as if viewed through rippling water. Its eyes are multiple, appearing as hollow voids of silence. This thing's terrifying. Tendrils extend from its back, each ending in a muted, screaming face, a symbol of silence chaos. That's pretty awesome. All right, so it's got some weaknesses, it's got some immunity, etc., etc. Legends whisper that the first Silentscreen Aberration was born from the first collective gasp of horror of those who witnessed the Silent Dawn's power. That is awesome. Now they are conjured by the Whispered Seers to act as guardians, a fusion of the cult's will and aberrant energies. Okay. It drops a Void Eye gem, which, when attuned, allows the bearer to cast silence once per day. That's kind of cool. And actually totally useful. So as always, you can find all these prompts down in the description. All right, so now that we've got some members and we have a monster and we have a leader, we also know the name of our place, of our cult, and we know kind of where they meet. Now we need some actual encounters. But actually, because I said I was going to, let's change their symbol. Can you give me 5 ideas for new symbols for this cult? All right, so I like 3 out of 5 of these, but I think we're going to go with number 2. So number 2 is a hushing hand. A human hand, fingers extended upwards with the index finger placed against where the lips would be, as if signaling someone to be quiet. The hand is surrounded by a silver glow, symbolizing the divine power of silence. So I like that. I liked the first one too, where it was basically an eclipse, but I think if you're trying to convince just regular civilians, something that's just kind of like that is going to be way more recognizable. All right, so now that we have that, let's design some encounters. So now we're getting into adventure design, and I don't want to take it too far into that realm just because I want to do another video on that sometime. But you already have a cult with members, you have their reason for being, you have their end goal, and you know kind of everything about them. There's even an aberration that has to do with them. So I think you could actually build something yourself out of this, but let's do a couple of these encounters and just not spend a whole lot of time on it and then see where it takes us. All right, so the Silent Awakening, first encounter with the Silent Dawn. You're in a small peaceful village named Whisperwind. It's very appropriate, but you know, put them wherever. Located in a valley surrounded by dense woodlands, the village is known for its serene landscapes and is often visited by monks and scholars seeking peace and inspiration. Okay, so you're exploring. The environment is unusually quiet, with nature itself seeming to respect the hush. The village center has a large stone fountain surrounded by... This is great. It's telling you like all about the area. Now, if you look around, the fountain, which was once the heart of the village with its clear flowing water, now stands still, the water appearing as solid as glass. While exploring, the players find a small hidden shrine with one of the symbols of the Silent Dawn. And there's a peculiar absence of children playing, birds chirping, and the usual hum of village life. Okay, so you've got things to look for. And if I wanted to, I could have prompted it. This is something I've done before. You could prompt it to give you, like, basically what you need to roll in order to find or learn these things. That's not too hard either. So social interaction, a local tavern named the Quiet Quill, and it gives you some people to talk to there and some things that they might, you know, talk about. Cool. It gives you some interactions. So then you have combat, which is at the edge of the Whispering Village, where the forest begins. A narrow pathway leads deeper into the woods, marked with subtle symbols of the Silent Dawn. As players decide to investigate further, they're ambushed by the Silent Shade Wisps, and which it's trying to use something that it tried to generate earlier. If I didn't stop it, then that wouldn't have showed up, but that's okay. You could generate a stat block for the Silent Shade Wisps, and a few lower ranking Silent Dawn cultists seeking to protect their secrets. Okay, and it tells you what to put in there. Okay, so the outcome and progression. Once the combat ends, players find a small map on one of the acolytes, and it basically takes them to the location. All right, so let's go like one more, and then we'll stop there. What would be the next encounter? It's about as easy as it comes. This is called The Silence Deepens, the Forest's Hushed Secrets. And it goes on to, again, give you exploration, social interaction, and I'm sure it's going to give you combat as well. And you can choose to use any of these if you want to. Now, this isn't quite as robust as doing an adventure design because it's totally just telling it to make something up. I do want to do another video on adventure design, so let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd like to see. But aside from that, this is pretty cool. It's actually coming up with real people like Jalin, who's a villager. There's Priestess of the Hush, Whispered Seers. That reminds me, I forgot to rename the cult leader and give him a new title. So let's do that once this is done writing. Could you give Seraphel Whisperwind a new title? I want it to be more thematic. So this isn't quite doing what I want it to do. What it's trying to do is actually give him a title or like a nickname, but I want it to actually redefine what his job is, but I still want him to be the High Priest. I just don't want it to be called High Priest. Could you suggest 5 other names rather than High Priest that would be Seraphel Whisperwind's job? So there's a few here, and I kind of like a couple of them. So there's Silent Oracle, which I feel like is a little too close to the spellcasters. There's Hush Keeper, which is not terrible, but doesn't exactly instill fear. Mute Hierophant, which, it's okay. Quietude Sentinel, that might be okay. And then I liked Whisper Seer. I think that one's okay. It does still sound a little bit like an underling, but in this case, I like that one, at least for now. If you don't like that, then you could just generate these all day long. Considering this cult is all about being quiet, it got me thinking, how are they going to get their points across to the players? So how would the cultists interact with the players since they can't talk? What method would they use to convey their intent? So I'm going to tell you, it gave me 8 different suggestions, and I don't know that I love many of them. The sign language one makes a lot of sense when you're considering inter-cultist communication, because they're all going to know the same language. There's written notes, which does make a little bit of sense, but it makes them like have to kind of get right up in your face to do that, or, you know, have things hanging, which that could be it. Gestures and body language, I mean, you're going to be doing that anyway. Facial expressions, ritualistic actions. That one's okay, but here's what I want to try. I said, I would like you to consider more magical means. So telepathy was kind of what I had in my mind. My only thinking is that does that actually produce quiet, right? Because if I heard somebody else's voice in my head, the intent of the cult of giving you that silence to be self-reflective is kind of defeated. So let's see what else we have. Illusionary images. Now that makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that a lot. Maybe all of these cultists just get the create minor illusion, and some of the higher cultists get create major illusion. Rune magic, okay. Emotional manipulation. That's got potential. Message cantrip, okay. At least it's a brief message, maybe, but meh. Dream communication. Now that actually is very cool. I could see, I liked using dreams in my own games, so maybe I just like that one a little too much. Summoned messengers. They could summon ethereal or silent creatures like wisps or silent familiars. That's kind of cool. They could like lead you places. Magical tokens, mystic pantomime, and arcane echoes. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some stuff to work with here, and I think that you could probably make that work. My guess is if you're playing on the internet, like through a virtual tabletop or something, this cult might not work so well because you don't necessarily want to be quiet. But if you're sitting in a room with people, you could absolutely, you know, almost make it a fun thing to pantomime what you're considering and what you want to get across. I'm sure your players will absolutely get it on the first try when you're trying to warn them of impending danger and they start laughing that you need to like go to the bathroom or something. Anyway, all right, so I think you can see here, we've only created the one cult. I want to create a bunch more. I might go play around with this for a little while myself, but I think you could see how you could create a cult using ChatGPT very easily and just ask it questions about what you're curious. Pretend that you're a player. What would you ask the DM? And just ask the AI and see what it comes up with. I bet it's going to be pretty good, and if you don't like it, tell it to make more. Thank you all for joining me here on Dungeons and Drams. This is always fun. Let me know what you'd like me to do next. I think my next one, I'm looking at my little list here. I might do a tavern, or possibly maybe I'll continue with this whole concept and do like an adventure design. That could be fun. Although I feel like adventure design is something that is a little bit more close to the chest for DMs. Like that's what the story that you want to tell. And it might just be more that you want to use AI to fill in some of the details. So maybe we'll approach it that way. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you want to see. And I will see you in a week when I release another one of these. All right. Have a great rest of your night and cheers.